Hey guys, today I'll show you a vampire horror TV series named Central Russia's Vampires, Season 1 and Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a vampire family who lived in Central Russia. Despite them being vampire craving for human blood, they live quietly. They live by the law and never kill humans. The million-year-old Grandpa Slava is the oldest of the family. Despite his stern appearance now, he's typically a good citizen who respects law and order. When faced with a cleaning lady's scolding for making the floor dirty, he tries not to cause any trouble and flies his chubby body up to pass the corridor. He lives with 3 other family members who, although not his biological children, carry his blood in their veins. The girl, Anna, was a Soviet police officer who tragically got shot during a mission. Grandpa Slava didn't want her to die young, so he cut his arm to feed her his blood, granting her immortality. Even now, she remains a police officer. In addition to the regenerative abilities they all share, Anna possesses the unique superpower of mind reading, which provides her with many conveniences during her dating. The second family member, Novich, is a doctor from the Napoleonic era who rashly shot at Slava, which initially earned him a one-way ticket to the afterlife. However, Slava later realized his mistake and thus revived him with his own blood. Of course, Novich still practices medicine today, but unlike ordinary doctors, he can glean information from his patient's blood and tell the patient's health conditions. Because of his medical profession, the family's dinner responsibilities fall on him. As for the young university student named Ivan, his joining of the family was purely accidental. An incident caused him to collide with Grandpa Slava someday in the past, causing blood to flow from the vampire's ear into Ivan's mouth, thus accidentally converting Ivan to the vampire family member. Since he's the newest member of the family, he hasn't yet developed his own superpower. Nevertheless, he's not someone you'd want to try robbing. After a busy night, he collects a bottle of blood from each person through tubes, with the principle of never endangering anyone's life. Unexpectedly, although he left them in good condition, 2 people later lost their lives. Anna took charge of the investigation, and with a piece of evidence left at the scene, she immediately located Ivan. Ivan confessed to Anna and Grandpa Slava that he just took 1 liter of blood from each of them and then left them there to rest, just as Grandpa taught him. He checked before his leaving that they were all still alive and all 3 were breathing. The third person is the survivor, the one lying down. They soon faced the investigation from the new investigator, Sergei. But compared to the new investigator, their greater concern was the guardian, Irina, a greasy lady who was supervising the vampire's activities in the living world. It turns out that a century ago, Slava had made a treaty with the guardians. If a vampire killed a person, that vampire would be instantly executed to death, and for Slava, the price would be doubled. Guardian Irina immediately set her sights on the new member Ivan, prompting Slava to hastily assure her that he would personally find the perpetrator. As a part of the police force, Anna was always privy to the latest information using her mind-reading power. Following a lead, they rushed to the hospital, only to find that the sole survivor had fled despite his grave condition, which left them dumbfounded. Dr. Novich's thoughts turned to his ex-wife, Olga, immediately. Olga, a member of the vampire family, had chosen not to live with them, and their lack of communication made Novich question her source of blood sustenance. When confronted by Novich's allegations, Olga accused him of not caring about her when he dumped her 81 years ago, and claimed she was busy being happy with a muscular man the previous night. Meanwhile, the unaware Ivan in the apartment was nonchalantly relocating Slava's coffin to run a live stream. Upon hearing that Sergei's computer contained unknown information to the rest, Slava decided to copy its contents, while Anna attempted to extract information directly from his brain using telepathy. However, Sergei's mind was filled with dirty thoughts of Anna's beauty, making her task difficult. Reluctantly, Anna had to make unintentional physical contact, which Sergei misinterpreted as a sign of hormone advance. Eager to take things further, he tried to persuade her to come back to his room for a heart-to-heart, body-to-body talk. After being rejected by Anna, Sergei tactfully chose to return to his room. But Anna suddenly realized that Grandpa Slava's task was still unfinished. As footsteps drew closer outside, Slava leapt from the 10th floor, landing in an ungainly manner, but fortunately without serious injury. Although Sergei didn't find anyone in the room, he noticed that his computer had been hacked and followed the network cable to the IP address, only to encounter several burly but bald men who publicly harassed Anna's sexy body. Sergei didn't hesitate to throw a punch at the man's bald head, but was immediately hit with a bottle. Anna, not one to just stand by, sensed blood nearby when her nose twitched, indicating trouble. Even though bringing strangers home was against the rules, Anna made an exception and dragged Sergei back. At that moment, the vampire guardian showed up, seeing Sergei lying on the table and mistakenly thinking they were dining. She wasn't interested in their good deeds. She was there to take away Ivan, who was supposed to have killed 2 human victims. Faced with the greasy vampire guardian's aggressive approach, Slava couldn't control his million-year-long anger and instantly changed into a bat-like monster. He revealed his true self, shouting at the greasy guardian never to touch his family and spitting at her his smelly saliva. Moreover, Slava played the emotional card, reminding her how he had helped her when she was nearly killed by a high fever as a child and how he supported her against bullies. Now, it was her turn to reciprocate. All Slava asked for was time, assuring her that they would find the real culprit, and if the perpetrator was one of their own, he would personally carry out the sentence. The greasy guardian was persuaded to leave by Slava, but his outdated wings were stuck outside. The next day, when Sergei awoke, he saw Olga, who had come for a visit. Initially, she didn't plan to reveal any clues in front of Sergei, but upon seeing Slava's nod of approval, she opened up. Before leaving, she didn't forget to take a sniff of Sergei's hormone smell, trying to hook him up. Sergei inquired about the identity of the rude woman, and Ivan told him it was Novich's ex-wife. Sergei said the woman was pretty weird, and Slava reapplied that's why she became Novich's ex-wife. Because Ivan had used Grandpa Slava's bedsheet to sharpen a knife, he was immediately taught a lesson. However, thanks to the vampire family's ability for physical regeneration, his wound quickly healed. As a newcomer to the vampire family, he was curious about everything. Upon discovering his superpowers, Ivan began to cut his arm recklessly. He thought he had gone too far, but it appeared to be just a false alarm. Nonetheless, the significant loss of blood soon left him in a state of hunger. Driven by his starvation, Ivan boarded a crowded bus. Looking at the tempting necks before him, he couldn't help but lean in closer. What's worse, the bloody scars that were left behind on the muscular man's neck nearly made him lose his control. However, the muscular man thought he was stalked by a gay boy, so he kicked his smelly butt out of the bus. Remembering Grandpa Slava's admonition, Ivan had to suppress his discomfort. If it weren't for Slava's hidden blood stockpile, Ivan might have caused more trouble. After all, Anna hadn't yet smoothed over his last mishap. Afterward, Anna received a call reporting a new murder, so she rushed there, only to find that Sergei had already been there, who turned and looked at her, flexing his vampire teeth. However, he wasn't any vampire. It turns out he made the dentures from the bite marks on the victim's neck. Seeing the bite marks on the new victim's arm, Anna knew it's the vampire's doing and the body couldn't be taken back to the police station, or else their entire family would be plunged into a new crisis. Reluctantly, she had to bite Sergei with her unbrushed teeth. When Sergei woke up again, everything seemed normal except for his own somewhat unusual neck. Anna immediately found Novich and asked him to help hide the body, but Slava happened to walk in on this scene. Having learned that it came from the garage, he suspected it's Olga's doing and found her. Slava hoped she would get Novich to verify the blood to prove her innocence. After all, Novich had learned to distinguish whose blood they had consumed from their blood. As Novich's ex-wife, she came asking him for a small favor before doing her test. However, the test results showed that there was no blood of the new victim in her body. On the other side, the rebellious Ivan was up to his usual antics at home, hanging himself. Anna had long lost her patience with her troublesome younger brother. Seizing the opportunity while Sergei was away, she taught him a harsh lesson, throwing his chicken body against the wall. Later, a blood test conducted by Novich on the new victim revealed that the corpse was not that of the sole survivor who had escaped from the hospital. However, what was certain was that wherever the survivor appeared, victims were found. Sergei also stumbled upon a new clue, finding a button from the last century at a new crime scene. Anna brought this new piece of information back home, and after flipping through old photos in Novich's album, they found the button on Olga's clothes. At the moment, she was enjoying a late-night snack, her arms bare. Suspecting her as the perpetrator, they hurried to her house immediately to have her explain the button found at the crime scene. However, Olga mentioned that she had donated some of her clothes to a museum and the rest to the student theater's costume shop. Most importantly, her blood was clean. Just then, the survivor, bare-armed and looking somewhat unwell after having his blood drained, appeared at the scene, which was puzzling compared to the numerous injuries he had when he fled the hospital, a mystery to Novich. So, Novich took a sample of his blood without delay. Meanwhile, Sergei had tracked them down following the phone interaction, and from the survivor's frequent call logs, found Olga's address. Now, as a prime suspect, the survivor was definitely required to return to the police station. He described a man in black who was desperately chasing him, to the point where he didn't even dare look in the rearview mirror as he sped into town and woke up in the hospital. But upon hearing the voice of that madman from his hospital bed, he opted to escape through the window. Of course, he was also unclear why his body had healed so quickly. His first instinct was to return to that garage. As for the newfound body, it was his unlucky roommates. To prevent their family from being implicated by the corpse, Anna asked Novich to come up with a suitable excuse for the survivor's roommate's death. Naturally, they would need Olga's help. Initially, Olga was reluctant to assist Novich, but she then remembered their shared past. Long ago, the two were a couple, as inseparable as any. But the thought of aging and death led Olga to the idea of becoming a vampire. To be with Novich forever, she made the drastic decision to turn herself. Therefore, she owed Novich a favor. The reason Novich sought her assistance was due to her unique witchcraft. When the security guard saw Novich attempting to stuff a body into the trunk, he demanded proper documentation. At that moment, Olga's supernatural abilities proved useful. She used her eyes to enchant the guard's mind. Suddenly, the guard became docile and did not forget to offer blessings for the body after everything was taken care of. After much contemplation, Novich finally discerned the reason behind the survivor's miraculous recovery. The only explanation was that when he was removing shards of glass, he had accidentally cut his palm and his blood had dripped onto the survivor's wound. However, from past experiments, Novich knew his blood alone wasn't enough for such healing. Moreover, he found a synthetic drug in the survivor's blood, which meant he needed to find out what the survivor had ingested. The combination pointed to the potential for cellular regeneration, and Novich was on the brink of developing a powerful medicine. Standing on the overpass, Olga and Novich reminisced about the past. Back when she had just become a vampire, Olga had uncontrollably harmed a maid for her blood. After many years, they found themselves at the same spot again. She tried to take Novich's hand, but he no longer held any affection for her. In a fit of anger and ignoring his pleas, Olga threw the body off the overpass. Although it was not what they had planned, they rationalized that a traffic accident was a plausible cause of death. On the other hand, Ivan and Grandpa Slava were investigating a house and made an intriguing discovery. Besides some animal specimens, what really caught their attention were the vampire photos on the wall. They immediately informed Anna and Sergei. Without a key, Sergei broke in decisively. Anna found a photo of Slava on the wall before Sergei noticed. Clearly, the group were unaware of the story behind it. Shortly after, a bright light shone through the window, and a young boy named Nikita returned with his grandfather, who could not walk. He explained that the devices on the wall were his grandfather's hobby for hunting vampires. Upon hearing the word vampire, the old man came out to clarify things himself. He spoke of his past frustration in trying to prove the existence of vampires, which led him to many places and eventually got him admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Mid-conversation, he started calling Sergei as his late partner, indicating that the old man was showing symptoms of dementia. However, Anna was well aware of the truth in the old man's words. After she shared this with Slava, he immediately sought out Irina. He was upset that Irina had admitted the old man to a psychiatric hospital, but Irina brought up another topic. She was willing to let go of Ivan's responsibility on one condition. She wanted Slava to turn her into a greasy vampire. Slava instantly recalled a past incident when a vampire had massacred an entire village. He had intended to execute the vampire, but a guardian stopped him at that time. As the murderer's brother, the guardian wanted to spare his sibling. Moreover, his serfs were dying daily, and these things would remain unknown if left unsaid. Thus, Slava firmly refused to let one of his kind stand on the wrong side of the law again. Back to the present, the greasy guardian expressed her willingness to leave her guardian position to her son. Her urgency to become a vampire stemmed from a tumor she had grown, and currently, there was no cure to save her life. Undoubtedly, Slava respected her son and knew Irina to be a person of principle. What he did not know was whether guardian Irina, once turned into a greasy vampire, would remain a good person. The day after, Nikita brought a set of photos to Sergei. Aside from some celebrities that the group recognized, there was also a vampiric photo of Ivan. But Ivan explained that it was his live streaming costume, and he even gave Sergei a party ticket. Elsewhere, Novich began to interrogate the survivor about the drugs he had taken. From his confession, it was revealed that the substances were illicit goods purchased from a special website. At that moment, Slava came looking for Novich, hoping he could develop a medication for Irina's condition. However, faced with cancer, Novich felt helpless. Seeing Slava's persistent pleas, he decided to try a formula only he knew, but he needed Slava's help to procure the banned substance. Thus, Grandpa Slava, through phone shopping, arrived at a location filled with children. When searching around, Slava was mistaken for an addict and driven away from the place. Suspecting he had been tricked by the phone shopping, he went to a new location on Ivan's advice. To avoid being deceived again, Grandpa Slava issued some vampiric warnings, demanding them to give him the banned substance. As a host of a vampire show, Ivan noticed a suspicious user named Dark Lord during a live chat. They suspected that this person was the mad assailant pursuing the survivor and committing all the murders. So they used the survivor's presence as bait, hoping to lure the killer to the upcoming vampire party. Sergei and his crew were also disguised and waiting there early. According to the plan they had set, Ivan began to distribute merchandise to 3 lucky fans. However, when it came to the Dark Lord's turn, there was no response. So they prompted the survivor to share his personal experience of surviving a vampire attack. Meanwhile, Grandpa Slava and Novich arrived at the party according to the designated location. Just as the two who had successfully completed the transaction were about to leave, they were caught red-handed by the police during a random check. At the party, the survivor, looking at vampiric Ivan on the stage, was reminded of the night he was attacked. Suddenly, his mind became hazy, and he began to see everyone around him as vampires. Taking advantage of the chaos caused by the police raid, the survivor ran towards the exit. By the time Ivan caught up with him, he had already been stabbed in the chest. This scene was witnessed by the pursuing police officers. Looking at the blood on his hands, it seemed like a difficult misunderstanding to explain. Unexpectedly, not only did the party fail to capture the Dark Lord, but it also led the 3 of them into a predicament. In the cell, Novich attempted to use his vampire strength to pry open the bars, but Grandpa Slava hurriedly reminded him of the surveillance. Their situation was already bad enough. The unfortunate 2 were arrested for being mistaken as addicts. While others went for a urine test, they couldn't pass stool because they hadn't consumed blood the previous day. To get released sooner, Slava pretended to be a patient in critical condition during the recording of his statement. Seeing his seemingly moribund state, the supervisor feared trouble and released both him and Novich. What's more distressing was that Ivan, mistaken for a murderer, was taken to the hospital for a blood test. Judging by his blood, the woman suspected Ivan was not like a teenager, but an 80-year-old man. To prevent his vampire identity from being exposed, Olga had already been waiting there for a long time. She used witchcraft to control the woman's thoughts and swapped Ivan's blood sample. At the same time, Sergei discovered new clues. He found that Nikita was not a student at all, but an intern at a district hospital. This indicates that he was fully aware of how to draw blood from the victims using a catheter, so they prepared to take him back for questioning. Sensing danger, Nikita donned a mask, removed his ID badge, and slipped past them. When they learned that all interns had to wear ID badges, Nikita's cover was blown from a distance. He triggered the fire alarm to create chaos and disappeared into the crowded scene. Anna, focused on the chase, didn't even notice the glass in her hand. She pulled it off, but her wound healed instantly. To avoid revealing her identity, she still put on a plaster. Later, they found the spiked tiger's claw in Nikita's car, which made them even more convinced that Nikita was the culprit of those murders and provided a reasonable explanation for those bite marks. They continued to question Nikita's grandfather, but were suddenly reminded of the radio used to arrest Nikita. Upon hearing such news, the old man suddenly suffered a heart attack. On the other side, Novich had finally developed that powerful medicine. He knew that the incurable disease of Irina could be treated. As Olga's new boyfriend, the survivor received the first injection. Such a knife wound would be no issue for this medication. However, Olga was starting to feel a bit unsteady. The survivor was not only her sex partner, but also her source of sustenance. Having not fed on blood for a while, she had grown weak. Later, Novich called Grandpa Slava to inform Irina to come for treatment. Slava was relieved, glad that he had saved her back in the Napoleonic era. Upon receiving the good news from Slava, Irina, stricken with the deadly illness, couldn't help but smile. But soon after, Olga rushed over, realizing that the survivor, having been medicated, was fading fast. Novich quickly notified Slava to cancel the appointment with Irina. Upon arrival, Novich discovered that his assistant had performed a blood transfusion on the survivor, rendering the medicine he had administered useless. After all, he only had 2 doses of that medicine. However, Novich still promised Olga he would save the survivor. Meanwhile, Slava had already found guardian Irina. Before revealing the truth, he shared many stories. It was clear that Irina had understood his intentions. Just as he was about to reveal the truth, Novich called in time, and Grandpa Slava signaled Irina could leave. However, passing by the sick room of Nikita's grandfather, Slava discovered this pitiable old man. He knew that this old man had once been institutionalized because of them. Therefore, he hoped to give him the last dose of the medicine. Irina couldn't bear the feeling of shattered hope. She bursted into tears like a giant baby. On the other side, upon learning of his grandfather's death, Nikita went completely mad. He lured Sergei to an old building. By the time Anna arrived, Sergei was unconscious. Faced with Anna's threats, Nikita spoke in a vampire's tone, claiming he was not afraid of death. While the other officers distracted him, Anna quietly appeared behind them and diffused the urgent situation. The moment the real perpetrator was caught, Ivan was also released. Anna was finally able to let go of her grudge and became affectionate with Sergei. However, her physical excitement also revealed her sexy but vampiric figure, sending chills down Sergei's spine to his smelly butt. Anna explained that her vampire family never killed humans because a group of guardians supervised them, so she was not much different from ordinary people. She then revealed that she had been a vampire for 74 years. Sergei, upon hearing Nikita still claiming to be a vampire, handed the interrogation rights to Anna. Nikita said that under his grandfather's influence, he had believed in the existence of vampires since he was a child and began drinking animal blood at the age of 12. In the hospital, he tasted human blood for the first time. The case with the button found on the crime scene was because 2 thugs were robbing his package. Nikita was attacked and fell, so he picked up a wooden board with nails, leaving a bite-like wound on one thug's neck. He used tubes to draw blood for storage. At this moment, Irina found Anna. She wanted to see if the real perpetrator was human or a vampire, but at the crucial moment, Nikita confessed to another perpetrator who had killed the other thug, and then released a photo of Ivan. Seeing this, Irina knew an execution of the vampire Ivan was imminent. Then came Nikita's continued confession. The man in black who chased the survivor and the one who killed the survivor roommate was him. But speaking of the body in the garage, Sergei felt a sense of déjà vu. Just as Anna was about to continue the interrogation, Sergei excused himself due to feeling unwell and halted the questioning. Since Sergei was aware of her vampire identity, Anna no longer hid the truth. She bluntly stated that it was she who had bitten him to make him forget the scene. Irina had tracked down Grandpa Slava, who, upon receiving a message from Anna, clearly understood her intentions. He assured her that he would personally escort Ivan to the designated location for execution. As soon as Ivan arrived home that evening, Slava took him for a walk, leading him to an ancient and dimly lit place. There, under the Guardian's electric shock, Ivan couldn't stay conscious and desperately protested that he had always lived by the rules and never killed anyone. But his explanations were too feeble at that moment, and just as Slava was about to lift an ancient axe, Ivan broke free from his chains and escaped through a window, right in front of everyone. Irina ordered Grandpa Slava to quickly recapture him. Later in the police station, Sergei discovered a new clue. He found bite marks on Nikita's neck. Going straight to the apartment, he asked everyone if they had bitten Nikita. When he found out that no one had, Sergei started to deduce that there might be some other vampire around, those who did not live by their rules. It was very likely that Nikita was covering for the hidden vampire. At the same time, Ivan encountered a mysterious figure on a street corner who took a deep swig of fresh blood from a bottle and offered to share with Nikita. The scene flashes back to the time when 2 gold diggers unearthed an ancient axe beneath a boulder in the wilderness. They were scared off by the sight, not expecting to find a hand still gripping the axe handle. They thought they had found a ticket to a golden life, but on their way back, one man accidentally cut his finger. That single drop of blood was all it took to awaken a vampire that had been dormant for hundreds of years. After a frantic meal, the vampire Klim regained his human form by sucking the 2 fools' blood and began to familiarize himself with this strange new world. Of course, it would be great if there was a free learning guide. The vampire later encountered Nikita and the two muggers at the street corner. He attacked the two muggers for the blood, leaving Nikita alive to serve as Klim's steady blood supply. The only useful thing Nikita could do was drag this newborn vampire down with him. Back to the present, upon learning that another vampire was living outside their rules, Grandpa Slava started to check the family tree, which had been sealed for many years. Though they couldn't find this suspicious vampire, they were clear that Nikita's service to that vampire was definitely to gain immortality. At this moment, Ivan, who had escaped the execution ground, was filled with rage. Unexpectedly, he was approached by Klim, and he chose to join forces with him. Ivan resented Slava for betraying him for an outsider, especially when he himself was wrongly accused for the murders. This was exactly what Klim wanted to see. His goal now was to develop Ivan's superpowers. He guided him to channel and take full use of his hidden power. As soon as Klim left, Ivan immediately took to the city streets, following Slava and looking for an opportunity. At a critical moment, he was dragged back. Klim pointed to the police vehicles and Guardian Irina's car, warning him not to act rashly. Just thinking about the old Guardian filled Ivan with rage. He felt that the cancer-stricken old lady wanted to drag him down with her as she died. This information also gave Klim a new opportunity. In the police station, Sergei had a brilliant idea while interrogating Nikita. He showed off the bite marks on his neck, trying to cozy up to him to extract Klim's address. He confessed that before Nikita, it was he who had been providing blood to their master Klim. Now, when it was his turn to be awarded with immortality, Klim was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Grandpa Slava found Irina once again. He warned that a new vampire had appeared, but Irina thought he was just stalling for time on Ivan's escape. Just as Slava left, Klim emerged from his room. Just like his promise to Nikita, he offered Irina eternal life, but on the condition that she capture all the vampires in Grandpa Slava's house. In the dead of night, while Irina was distracted, Ivan rang the apartment's doorbell. As he entered, Slava embraced him. He didn't come for revenge this time. Now, to prove he wasn't useless, he decided to help catch Klim. Once he activated the GPS tracker, Grandpa Slava's crew would be ready to take action. To avoid being caught by Irina at the door, Novich prepared a suitcase for him. It was clear he couldn't accomplish this alone, so everyone helped stuff him into it. While they wondered who would be able to get him out, Novich's colleague's husband showed up and beat him up. Novich had apparently done some shady things. Afterward, through Olga's witchcraft control, Ivan was dragged out. He left the dumpster divers on the street in awe as he saw him emerge from the suitcase. As soon as the phone began to trace the location, Grandpa Slava called the Guardians. They quickly gathered at Klim's building, and Klim sensed something was off through his sensitive beard, and knew immediately that he had been betrayed. He then threw Ivan to the ground, who, with his last ounce of strength, tossed the tracking device into Klim's coat. Of course, this meant Ivan had no chance of escaping. He was later captured by Irina, and being accused of murdering innocent humans, he was executed in front of Grandpa Slava and his people. Grandpa Slava was filled with regret, and everyone knew that this was far from over. On the street, Klim approached Slava, who suddenly remembered the past. It turns out that a century ago, Slava had knocked vampire Klim to the ground and was about to crush him with a boulder. Grandpa Slava had intended to finish Klim, but he hesitated because Klim had his blood in him. His mercy prevented him from decapitating Klim. Instead, he buried him deep underground, who was later released by the two gold diggers by mistake. The thought of his mercy leading to Ivan's death made Slava want to take action, but fighting there would endanger innocent lives. So he sought out Irina again, but she still didn't believe his words. At the same time, Sergei, armed with a warrant, broke in. He berated Irina for taking lives at will. According to local law, Irina faced 15 years of imprisonment. Hearing this, she couldn't help but laugh her shit off. Given her condition, she was definitely not able to live another 15 years. Grandpa Slava quickly pulled Sergei out. Afterward, Irina finally agreed to Klim's terms, but Klim wanted to see all the vampires captured before granting her eternal life. Sergei, knowing too much, became a thorn, and he was knocked down by a guardian. Anna was upstairs, witnessing everything. Olga decisively stepped in to help, but she went too far, and the guardian was killed. Novich wanted to save him with a potion, but the success rate wasn't 100%. Grandpa Slava, knowing the situation, was helpless. He talked to Irina again, agreeing to grant her eternal life so Olga's murder wouldn't be pursued. Unexpectedly, he was decisively rejected. As Irina's granddaughter called her away, Slava left secretly through the window. He had discovered the secret that Irina and vampire Klim were joining forces, a disaster for the family since they held power. He hurried them to leave the city while he followed Ivan's tracker to Klim. To make Slava suffer, Klim had already had his family members captured and taken back. This action completely enraged Grandpa Slava, who once again showed his true vampiric form, only to fall before he could act. The four were taken to an old building where Klim decided to kill Slava last. It's then revealed that 2 centuries ago, it was Slava who caused the loss of Klim's love. Though he was rescued from a plague by Slava, he would never forgive him. He believed that humans were not even worthy to be compared with vampires. In his eyes, his beloved, no matter how many she killed, should not have been executed for killing humans. Vampires, creatures blessed with immortality by nature, were foolishly bound by Slava's ignorance to the shackles of the law. Unlike Klim, Grandpa Slava spent his entire life trying to become human. It was these words that awoke Guardian Irina. She decided to abandon the unbearable eternity and turned her weapon against Klim. Clearly, these people were no match for the powerful Klim. Just as he was about to strike Irina's son, Kostik, Sergei opened fire with his handgun in a wild spray. Unfortunately, it did no harm to Klim's bulletproof muscles. As he was about to execute with an axe, Irina knocked him down the stairs with an IV stand. Klim, impaled by the rebar, quickly regained consciousness. Sergei called out for help to the survivor in the distance. Soon enough, a car hit Klim, knocking him out. But the vampire's regenerative abilities allowed him to stand once again. As the standoff continued, Sergei shot the leaking oil cap of a car, the high temperature causing Klim to lose consciousness. With a nod from Slava, Sergei executed the vampire villain with an axe. During a long-awaited family dinner, Irina's son Kostik appeared as the new guardian. He came because of Olga's murder case. Novich quickly came forward to cover for her, thinking that her pregnancy could save her from being executed. However, Kostik insisted on monitoring her pregnancy himself. Thus, Olga was taken away from the apartment. The treaty, originally signed with Irina out of humanity, began to deform, and Grandpa Slava decided to abandon this peace. This scene shifts back to the accident where Slava clashed into Ivan. Onlookers thought both were done for, but suddenly Slava's hand moved. As a vampire with regenerative abilities, he simply adjusted his dislocated spine and was fine. When he felt pity for Ivan behind him, he didn't expect him to stand up too. Slava knew he had trouble, because Ivan had accidentally drunk his blood and became a newborn vampire. When bystanders saw his blood-stained face and reached for their phones to call the police, Slava quickly explained they were filming a prank and that Ivan's face was just smeared with ketchup. Slava followed Ivan to find his address. The roommate was stunned to see Ivan return unharmed from the accident. More curious than the blood on his face was the fact that he was unscathed. Ivan grabbed a cola and gulped it down, only to find the taste bizarre. His senses gradually became abnormal. On a date with his girlfriend, he could smell a squirrel from afar. Unfortunately, while kissing using his tongue, he couldn't control his bite, causing her to bleed. His girlfriend cursed him out and stormed her sexy body off. That's when Slava behind spoke up, asking Ivan to tell him if it was the kiss he liked just now, or the taste of blood. Grandpa Slava added a new cup that very day to smooth over his own mistake. He said that the same faces were always around the house, so he thought of bringing in a newcomer. Novich was immediately displeased. A newcomer meant a heap of trouble. No one wanted to take the time to train him. But it was too late for that. They had to accept it whether they liked it or not. Ivan's first lesson in the vampire family was to learn to drink blood. Slava suggested he think of the blood as juice. As soon as he tasted it, his fangs were revealed. Shocked at seeing his fangs, he rushed to look in the mirror, and a myriad of questions sprouted in his mind, wondering why he could see himself in the mirror as a vampire, if the blood in the cup was obtained through murder, and why they could go out during the day. Slava opened the fridge by the table, saying that Novich would bring everyone's food home after work. Seizing the opportunity while going to the restroom, Ivan escaped the apartment. But the moment he stepped outside, he found his hearing had become exceptionally sharp. He could hear not just distant phone conversations, but also the songs playing in other people's earphones. This sudden abnormality even prevented him from crossing the street normally. In his anger, he smashed his fist onto the hood of a car. If it weren't for Anna, who showed her police badge to cover for him, the car owner would have definitely had a fight with him, especially after seeing the huge dent. When Ivan saw his girlfriend with a new boyfriend, he pushed the man 10 meters away with a single shove. Ivan tried to explain to his girlfriend, but accidentally turned her phone into a vase. Clearly, his first day as a vampire was not going well. Fortunately, Novich took care of the aftermath. Otherwise, the police would have been after him for sure. Back in his dorm, he began to feel hungry. Seeing his roommate fresh from a shower, his eyes were fixated on his neck. He thought sunflower seeds might relieve it, but the smell of blood lingered between his nose and his roommate. Just as he was about to make a mistake, Grandpa Slava stopped him from outside the window. Slava brought Ivan back home and told him that hunger was a vampire's enemy, which could lead to foolish actions. Ivan, now empowered, felt that his worries were unnecessary. He believed no one could harm him. Grandpa Slava then formally explained the treaty between the Guardians and the vampires. First, he must never let anyone discover his vampire identity. Second, he must never kill a human. When Slava called him family, Ivan immediately asked to borrow 70,000 and bought a new phone for his smelly girlfriend to show his sincerity. She chose to forgive him. Then, with the remaining money, he bought a Christmas tree and some food that they couldn't eat. While he was in the bathroom, Olga also arrived to celebrate the holiday. Seeing a stranger in the house, she bit his neck without hesitation, clearly unaware of the new arrival. Although Ivan didn't seem too bright, it was clear Grandpa Slava was fond of him. But soon, everyone was distracted by the doorbell. Ivan had brought his girlfriend to the apartment. It was evident that he hadn't taken Slava's first rule to heart. Dissatisfied with this, he still felt the need to prove his identity. Novich had to make the girl faint. Grandpa Slava warned Ivan that if he mentioned the word vampire again, he would rip out his juicy tongue. To make Ivan forget the girl, Olga took her into the room for a talk. She used magic to control the girl's thoughts, making her accuse Ivan of being a 2-minute guy during their intimate moments. But before the girl could even speak, Ivan couldn't resist the urge to bite her neck. Unable to control himself, he had to flee the room. Ivan furiously accused Slava of turning him into a monster, and he hated him. On the street, Grandpa Slava urged him to learn to face reality, saying the real Ivan had died in that car accident. Although he was sorry to have made him live forever, Ivan should cherish the second chance at life given to him by Slava. Finally, Ivan chose to forgive and they both went home. Just when the atmosphere had lightened a bit, the electricity suddenly went out. Ivan suggested they all head into the city for some fun. Grandpa Slava made a direct call to a friend. Upon arriving, Ivan was astounded. He felt this was the castle vampires were meant to inhabit. At that moment, a distinguished man emerged from within. Besides Grandpa Slava, he was the oldest vampire there. When asked how much it would cost to buy the castle, he said he works 8 hours a day and had been doing so for 300 years. He told Ivan to figure out how much that would be. Since there were other people sleeping in the castle, he couldn't invite them in, but he still brought a grand gift for Slava. Before leaving, Slava whispered to him, asking him to predict Ivan's future. He said the kid was kind and sunny, and his life would be interesting. When Grandpa Slava asked if it would last long, he replied it would be interesting, perhaps not wanting to worry Slava. After all, he had already distinctly smelled Ivan's future. The scene shifts back to the present when a vampire of a different clan purposely stopped a car, but the passing officer paid her no mind. However, they were surprised to find that the same woman had appeared before them again. This time, she didn't raise her hand, but tore off a roadside warning sign and thrust it towards the officer's car. Of course, her target wasn't the officer. She retrieved the head of one of her own kind from the police. Compared to the vampire's reckless behavior, Slava and his vampire family in another city had a completely different lifestyle. They had a treaty with the Guardians and were prohibited from harming human lives, relying on blood bags brought home by Dr. Novich for sustenance. Nevertheless, 2 members of their family had met with misfortune, including Ivan being mourned, and Olga, who was under surveillance for killing the Guardian. Olga, who should have been beheaded, was spared temporarily because she was pregnant. As a condition, Novich developed a special medication to deactivate the tumor in Irina's body. He tried to get Olga the chance to walk in the fresh air, but was flatly refused by Kostik. Yet, considering it was Olga's birthday, Kostik decided to make an exception. But upon entering, she was met with her insults and cursing. Of course, Kostik politely retaliated, telling her to enjoy her sunbath here. Olga asked him to take off his sunglasses because the sunshine is so brilliant. Kostik wouldn't listen to her, but that wasn't the real reason for the sunglasses. It was because Olga could control his mind through eye contact. To get a chance to breathe fresh air, Olga made a strange noise, and Caustic couldn't help but press his face against the door. However, the sunglasses affected his perception, and he took them off. Olga achieved her goal. She manipulated his mind via eye contact and ordered Caustic to open her cell door. When Caustic returned, the only thing left in the room was a middle finger gesture painted on the wall. As for Anna, she was not only a vampire but also served as a police officer in society. However, today was an unfortunate day for her. She saw a car accident and went to check, only to find the officer in the driver's seat was her investigator boyfriend Sergei. It was only after checking the phone that she realized she had missed her boyfriend's messages about a murder case. Through mind reading on a witness, she learned the ins and outs of the car accident. Without time to grieve, she rushed to the crime scene only to see a headless body and a tattoo resembling a clock face left an impression on her. After taking some physical samples, she moved on to the accident site. In an abandoned box, she found a little girl, shivering and mute. Through mind reading, Anna could only hear frightened screams. So she took the girl home for a brief comfort before showing the photo to Novich and Slava. But identifying him from the pictures proved difficult. Only after Novich tasted the sample did he dare to assert that the person was not human. Suddenly, the little girl became the only clue in 2 cases, but Anna could no longer hold on today. The loss of her boyfriend Sergei was too painful. Meanwhile, in the park, a dog sniffed out the scent of blood, and above the trail of blood was a lifeless male corpse, which scared the witness to scream in a chicken voice. The scene shifts to a bald businessman pressing Caustic's hand and starting to cut between the fingers with a knife until he made a cut and then stopped. He wanted to test if the secret potion Caustic brought was really effective. The moment the potion touched the thumb, the wound miraculously healed. His referrer was a high official who had made friends with Caustic, who had used medicine to help his daughter recover from a fracture. Of course, Caustic was not a skilled doctor. He was just a guardian with a contractual relationship with the local vampires. To keep Olga under surveillance, the vampire family developed a drug that could treat Irina's tumor. However, the effects of the potion were clearly beyond that. Since being a guardian was only a responsibility with no actual benefits, Caustic thought of using the potion to pave the way and seek benefits for himself. Dr. Novich, apart from curing diseases, was more importantly able to bring back blood bags to satisfy everyone's daily needs. But recently, Slava started to act strangely, always saying he was craving blood. Upon receiving blood bags, he didn't refrigerate them, but poured the blood into an iron tub in the bathroom. As for the little girl newly brought home, she didn't speak a word, but Novich was sure her ears were fine. To gain her trust, Grandpa Slava interacted with her carefully, but he was powerless to provide anything too expensive. Slava tried to strike up a conversation about her tattered clothes, but the fall of a plastic mannequin head made the girl instinctively retreat. In the park where the old people gathered, accompanied by music, the two of them even danced impromptu. There they also met Guardian Caustic and his daughter. Because the little girl hadn't spoken yet, Grandpa Slava had to make up a name for her on the spot. Until they could figure out the little girl's situation, Slava could only say she was the neighbor's child. But just as they were about to say goodbye, Caustic's daughter suddenly called out the little girl's name, which exposed the old man's lies. Afterward, Grandpa Slava and the little girl began a simple conversation. He looked at the little girl and the potted plant in front of him and couldn't help but think of the dead Ivan from before. However, when they went to the history museum, the little girl became lost in thought in front of an old photograph. She said her mother had been murdered. Slava stepped aside and called Anna, asking her to come home. By the time the two of them got home, the little girl had already beaten Slava at cards. Not taking it well, he grabbed a hay fork and viciously stabbed it into the cabinet behind the little girl, declaring that no one could beat him. They didn't understand what had gotten into Slava, but suddenly the little girl changed and revealed her fangs. After pulling the fork out of her body, she smashed through the window and escaped. Clearly, Grandpa Slava had seen through her identity. Although she was cunning, Slava, who had lived for 1,000 years, was not to be underestimated. It turns out, while Grandpa Slava was organizing blood bags in the bathroom, he heard the record player start up in the house. The girl could use the record player but couldn't play with toys meant for her peers. Especially when they went to the park where retired seniors danced. She could hum the old songs they played in a low voice. Of course, what made Slava suspicious was her staring at the war photos, remembering her own murdered mother. Meanwhile, the escaping girl encountered a young troublemaker, and with one punch, she made him smash the window of the children's clothing store for her. The next day, Anna found out about the little girl's situation in the interrogation room. The clothing store owner said that only one dress of the same style was missing. She informed Slava right away. Then, Slava suddenly thought of the guard's daughter and a piece of cloth in her hand. So he followed Kostik's daughter and unexpectedly ended up at his own front door. While pouring water, Slava secretly discovered her purpose. It turned out that the little girl had asked her to retrieve a cloth doll for her. At the construction site, it seems Novich was a step ahead. He discovered that the little girl was about to bite a man who had fallen to the ground. No sooner had they flexed their teeth at each other than they started playing a game of hide-and-seek. Clearly, the little girl was no match for Novich and got caught very soon, but she pretended to be caught by a bad guy, drawing the attention of the bystanders. The passers-by started attacking Novich, and once again the girl made her escape. Fortunately, Anna arrived just in time to free Novich from his predicament. The fleeing girl waited at the agreed spot and finally met Kostik's daughter, who handed her the cloth doll. Breathing a sigh of relief, the girl also confirmed that she had found a true friend. But to avoid being discovered by others, the girl decided they would play together another day. As she was searching through the contents of the cloth doll, Grandpa Slava appeared behind her, holding the mother-daughter photo she had been looking for. The evil girl pounced on Slava without hesitation. Because of yesterday's incident, Guardian Kostik confirmed the reliability of the vampire elixir. The bald businessman brought a bag of money, wanting to exchange it for 5 bottles of the potion. But this stuff wasn't as common as tap water, and Novich would only give Kostik enough for his sick mother. Of course, Novich was open to increasing the dosage, but he wanted the supervised Olga to get some fresh air outdoors. The two disagreed and parted on bad terms. Unable to get the medicine, Kostik thought of refunding the money to the bald businessman, but the bald man didn't care about his reasons. If he didn't see the medicine, there would be trouble. So Kostik sought Olga's help, hoping she could use her powers to erase the bald man's memory. In return, he agreed to let Olga temporarily go outside. The bald man was lured by Kostik, and as soon as he arrived, Kostik put on his sunglasses, and Olga began her witchcraft. And to her surprise, she could easily erase the bald man's memories, probably because he was too bald to protect his brain. Kostik thought he could pocket the money, but in a daze, the bald businessman asked where the medicine was. Clearly, he didn't know that pregnant Olga's powers were diminishing. The frustrated Kostik took away all of Olga's things. Late at night, a police chief transferred from Moscow found Anna. Besides the new tattoo clue he had discovered, he wanted to see the little girl Anna had been caring for. While Anna was at a loss, Grandpa Slava brought the little girl back. The girl, seemingly cute and clueless, was actually a nearly century-old vampire. The girl's supernatural power was to sense death. She could see a black mist hovering over the heads of those about to die. Once the black mist appeared, that person had only an hour left. Because the girl had grown accustomed to sudden deaths, she would mercifully end their lives. However, the man who died in the factory had nothing to do with her. The girl followed him, never expecting the man to fall from the building first. But obviously, without proof, the other vampires didn't quite believe her. However, when Anna received surveillance footage showing the man falling from the building, they realized the girl hadn't lied. It's revealed that the little girl came from a vampire community and, along with 11 other high-ranking members, had established a farm that provided employment. But as the farm developed and prospered, many vampires' appetites grew. They wanted more blood and power, turning the workers into expendable commodities and the farm into something resembling a prison. Disagreeing with them, the vampire girl decisively fled the farm. Soon, they sent hunters after her. During a year on the run, she was adopted by a kind family in an orphanage. But before she could enjoy any peace, the hunters had found her. The little girl had to continue hiding. She accidentally arrived at a remote village, and when an old lady asked whose child she was, she turned and saw the black mist over her head. Mistaken for an orphan, the girl decided to accept her invitation. But just as dinner was served, an axe was thrust into the lady's back. The hunters had found her. The girl, no longer holding back, seemed to be at a disadvantage initially. The hunter, axe in hand, thought he was about to finish the job, but he didn't expect the little girl to turn the tables in a desperate counterattack and send him to hunt Satan in hell. The vampire girl, awaiting her recovery, was then found by Anna. While Anna used telepathy, the girl realized Anna was also a vampire, but she wasn't from the farm, so the girl simply followed Anna to this place. As for the tattoos on the hunter's hands, they were the mark of new vampires, pointing to the number of the high-ranking vampire who turned them. The arrow pointing to 7 revealed their vampire boss named Boris. To test the girl's psychic abilities, Novich brought her to his workplace by the ward. There, the girl paused, noticing a worker outside the window, shrouded in a black mist and flailing due to a snapped safety rope. They coaxed the worker down, but the girl knew it was in vain. Novich was shocked to find his office was looted, and amidst his investigation, a clang from outside confirmed the worker's ill fate. The duo felt a pang of guilt, fearing they had become inadvertent murderers. The thought of murder took the girl back to her mother, and the carnage wrought by the invading German troops on their village, the chaos and grief that shaped her into what she is now. Yet despite nearing a century old, she could still relate to a young girl's playfulness. After a phone call, the two sought out guardian Kostik. There, Novich was barred from seeing his pregnant ex-wife again, simply because he refused to mass-produce a secret potion for him. Kostik claimed his mother was now the chosen one, no longer in need of Novich's potion. Novich was well aware of Kostik's plot, knowing it was he who had ransacked his office, aiming to craft medicine with the formula and Olga's blood on his own. To validate the stolen samples, Kostik tested them on a subordinate. Once he got Olga's blood, he hastily sent the finished potion to a buyer, yet when he injected it into his mother, she writhed in agony. Thinking it was a dosage issue, Kostik administered another shot, only to see her condition worsen. Thankfully, some of the original potion remained, which ultimately saved his mother. Terrified, Kostik returned to the office to test the drugs, unaware that Olga, now pregnant, had begun to humanize, rendering her blood ineffective. At the police station, the vampire girl's foster mother arrived with her companion in black attire, who was none other than the vampire hench lady sent by the vampire boss. They had discovered the vampire girl's location online, and she immediately sensed something was off, saying she could detect the scent of death. Since the bald businessman's secret potion had failed to work and nearly killed his father, he demanded 20 million as compensation. Left with no choice, Kostik approached Slava and Novich for help. If they could cover the 27 million, he would release Olga, who was causing trouble. Although it was a substantial sum, Slava agreed without hesitation. Novich was impressed, unable to imagine boasting of such a thing. Slava didn't have that much cash on hand, but he had some inventory. In the past, he had reclaimed a bunch of spoils from invaders, intending to return the treasure to the local people. However, he worried it might bring them misfortune, so he decided to throw it into a pond. Upon arriving, they discovered a film crew on location. To blend in, they wore Napoleon-era clothes, but the security officer insisted on showing off his book-learned knowledge by having Novich's silver buttons replaced with gold ones. It's worth noting that Novich, who is French and from the Napoleonic era, had been turned into a vampire by Slava during the war. Tired of his prattling, Novich silenced the officer with a knife. After retrieving a chest of treasures, they encountered the steward called by the security officer. Without better choice, Grandpa Slava and Novich bared their fangs, biting and knocking out the group present. Out of courtesy, Slava gave each of them a gold coin for medical expenses, while they took the large chest and handed over the treasures to Kostik for Olga's release. When the bald businessman came to collect his 20 million, Kostik didn't give him a penny extra, just the bag of money used to buy the medicine. Faced with a room full of armed people, the bald man didn't dare to flex his bald head and make a scene. The reason for the sudden increase in brave guardians willing to risk their lives was because Kostik had started paying them salaries. Previously, working as a guardian paid nothing. It was the money that built trust among them. At that moment, the vampire girl spotted a black mist above the room, a sign that death might be approaching. Suddenly, Anna received a call from the sheriff saying her foster mother was on her way, but they didn't know that a vampire who came to capture the vampire girl was sitting next to her foster mother. The vampire hench lady had the supernatural ability to inflict pain, and her foster mother even had a nosebleed on the way. While the hench lady offered her a tissue, the sheriff noticed the tattoo of an arrow on her arm. He quickly arranged for them to meet at the local police station. In front of the one-way glass, the vampire girl immediately recognized the vampire hench lady. Anna suggested that the girl meet her foster mother alone. She wanted to talk to this social service worker. The girl warned Anna that she was no match for the hench lady, but Anna, determined to investigate her late boyfriend's case, confronted the powerful hench lady directly. However, Anna was no match for her, and not wanting to cause trouble here, the hench lady knocked down the iron bars and escaped. The foster mother was inconsolable, pleading with the sheriff to take good care of the girl. So, Anna took on the responsibility of looking after her. As for the vampire hench lady, she faced a difficult time explaining herself upon returning alone. Her henchman colleague lamented that their boss, Boris, would be furious. Sure enough, the henchlady voiced her apologies, yet Boris, clutching her head, robbed her of her sight. Despite the henchlady's failure to complete her mission, Boris still quite admired her combativeness in her battle with Anna, the officer she nearly killed. So Boris decided to give her another chance. Turning to Grandpa Slava, he had been using large amounts of blood lately. He decided to hit the streets in search of opportunities. Confronted by some unfriendly-looking youths, Slava bared his fangs and was about to take out a bottle, but then he realized that the commotion was simply a form of wedding procession. Thus, he looked for a new target. The sudden rush of a speeding car caught his attention. He was about to teach the impolite driver a lesson when he discovered they were rushing a pregnant woman to the hospital. After a fruitless search, Slava's attention turned to a home network repairman who wanted to charge him $7,000 for a 5-minute job. Slava haggled him down to a mere $500 for the service call. Hearing that repairmen aimed to earn more, Grandpa Slava had an epiphany. He went out and tore off many contact details of purported tech geniuses. Sure enough, a young man immediately asked for $6,000, but Slava took a bottle of his blood instead after revealing his fangs. The second one wanted $7,000 even after a discount, and the third was even more outrageous, asking for $8,000. Grandpa Slava didn't treat him gently either. The fourth was absurd. He thought fixing computers was a trivial matter and only wanted a cup of tea in return. But when Slava fetched a drink, he realized that computer repair was just a side job for the man. His main occupation was theft. Faced with this predicament, Grandpa Slava had his own reasonable methods of dealing with it. But one thing was certain: he didn't take their lives, for the local laws prohibited harming others. Meanwhile, Olga's boyfriend brought her medicine. She repeatedly told him she was a vampire, but he didn't take her words seriously. So in front of him, she stabbed Novich several times, baring her large teeth to prove her identity. Because Novich was losing blood, he thought of asking Slava for some, but Slava said he had drunk it all. Slava's recent bizarre behavior inevitably piqued their curiosity. Novich kicked down the bathroom door and was shocked to find Slava bathing in a blood-filled tub, claiming it was for rejuvenation. They left as bewildered as they arrived, clearly misunderstanding his true purpose, and in the tub, one could now hear someone else's breathing. As they pondered when they missed Grandpa Slava's health regimen, the living room was inexplicably filled with the sound of a record playing. It turned out to be Boris and his crew who had come to take the runaway girl. Slava was clearly reluctant to let her go. Boris, seemingly cold-blooded, still carried some decorum, giving Slava time to think, then turned his attention to the record. Seeing his interest, Slava generously gifted it to him. Although no violence ensued at this meeting, Slava knew this matter wouldn't be settled easily. As old residents of the city, they fell into crisis for offending their kind from Moscow. Fortunately, the henchmen from Boris revealed their vampire boss's plans in advance. He no longer wanted to be under Boris's thumb, but the time to act hadn't come yet. Slava had a plan in mind. He was thinking of luring the vampires into the woods, using his ability to float in the air to his advantage, leading them to fall into traps full of iron stakes. There are essentially two ways to take a vampire's life. One is to decapitate them, and the other is to turn them to ash. Now that the props were in place, it was just a matter of the young people going to set it up. Because Novich had been under surveillance, he then handed the task over to Olga, who had never shown her face. Olga went to test the trap, but due to an oversight, Olga dropped her phone in the trap, and what's worse, she hadn't even noticed. Meanwhile, Novich and Anna received calls one after another. They realized that the gang was deliberately luring them out of the house, but the two planned ahead and went to the traps early. After watching them leave, Slava secretly dragged a young man's corpse he had selected from the morgue that morning into the bathroom, seemingly planning for something. Soon, the vampire boss Boris and his crew came knocking on the door. The henchlady immediately restrained Slava's hand and used her special ability to inflict pain on him. Compared to ordinary people, Grandpa Slava clearly had a higher tolerance for pain. After a period of torment, he agreed to lead them to the little girl. Just as they were about to step into the trap, a phone's ringtone sounded from beneath the ground. Realizing that her phone might have fallen into the trap, Olga hurriedly asked her boyfriend to hang up the call. At the same time, the sheriff raised his gun from behind, having followed because he saw Grandpa Slava being held hostage. But clearly, his timing was off. Seeing the henchlady take the sheriff's gun, Anna and Novich also emerged from the shadows. Boris suddenly became aware of the trap and instructed the henchlady to shoot as a lesson for them. The only one afraid of bullets fell to the ground after being shot, but today was not the day for a final showdown between the two vampire clans. Boris then left a harsh word and then left the scene. It turns out the man on the ground was not just the sheriff, he was also Anna's lover from 30 years ago. Due to irresistible reasons, she had to disappear from the public eye. These past few months, she had been hiding her past under the identity of the sheriff's daughter. At times like this, she especially resented Slava because the vampire transformation from him inflicted such pain on her. But after all, time is a good healer, and Slava had given her plenty of such medicine. Suddenly, Novich presented the severed head of the young man from the morgue. He challenged Slava, asking where the rest of the body had gone. Slava was aware that he could no longer keep his secret. He had used a bloodbath to resurrect Ivan, and now the blood-soaked Ivan stumbled out of the bathroom to stand before his family. Slava was ecstatic. His so-called grandson had indeed been successfully brought back to life. Novich was perplexed as to how he had been kept in the dark, for Grandpa Slava also valued secrecy in his affairs. After all, reviving a vampire is a delicate matter. Although the revived Ivan's intelligence had not fully returned, Slava had been nurturing Ivan's skull with blood ever since bringing it home. He never anticipated that the skull would actually change until muscle tissue began to form on its surface. Grandpa Slava then placed the young man's corpse from the morgue into the bathtub, soaking him together with Ivan's skull. Of course, the most crucial step involved a unique manuscript. The moment it was placed into the bathtub, it reacted. Gazing at the medical marvel before him, Novich couldn't help but wonder where Slava had learned such things. It's then revealed that a millennium ago, Slava was just an ordinary member of his tribe. During droughts, the tribe would sacrifice the eldest among them. That year, at 43, Slava was tied to the totem pole. As the crowd dispersed, an unidentified creature emerged from the shadows and bit into Slava's ribs, crushing them. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck. The creature let out a wail and was no more, but Slava awoke with fangs in his mouth. Since then, he had fought for his tribe and land, facing waves of invaders from cold to firearms. The only constant was Slava's guardianship of the land. During this time, there had also been a formidable warrior who dismembered Slava, but he was revived by the blood of these fighters, which is why he decided to boldly attempt the resurrection. Amidst his excitement, an unwelcome phone call came in. It's Boris, who stated he was on a sightseeing boat, threatening to sink 20 children into the lake if Slava did not deliver the vampire girl within an hour. The little girl did not want to burden others, but Grandpa Slava already considered her one of his own and believed there was a way to overcome this difficulty. Their conversation was overheard by guardians outside the door, who wanted to help but was refused. But Caustic realized his own daughter was on that boat, so he rushed to the control center. Before he could reach there, the vampire girl had already detected something odd. Black mist floated above her head, and she soon collapsed under Caustic's stun baton. Caustic stopped Slava's plan before it could unfold. Though Slava canceled the plan over the phone, he insisted that Caustic should bring the little girl himself for the exchange. Clearly, Anna and Novich understood the subtext of Slava's words, so they rushed to get rid of Caustic and saved the vampire girl. Since everyone was out on missions, Slava entrusted Olga with the task of looking after Ivan. Olga, worried her boyfriend would age or die suddenly, wanted her family to turn him into a vampire, but no one was willing to assist her, so she set her sights on Ivan, who didn't understand her intentions. Frustrated by her failed plan, she grumbled, prompting Ivan to storm out of the house. Seeing the grandpa on the bridge, Ivan couldn't help but feel excited. Slava quickly knocked out the guardians beside him and pinned all his hopes on Ivan. Slava instructed him to sneak into the lake from the shore and to push the bad guys off the boat's bow as soon as the sightseeing vessel arrived. Ivan, thinking it was a game, turned and headed to the riverbank, only to encounter his ex-girlfriend. However, he had no memory of her now. When Ivan was stopped by the girl, Slava took off the guardian's shoes and made a precise throw, knocking the annoying girl down. The flying shoe reminded Ivan of his game with Slava, and after boarding the boat held by Boris, Ivan dragged him into the lake. Boris tried to take Ivan's sight, but Ivan was powerful and regained control of his vision, using telekinesis on Boris. Suddenly, a fish swam by, distracting Ivan. Boris finally surfaced his tortoise head for air, but the persistent Ivan quickly followed suit and dragged him back into the lake. This time, Boris wasn't so lucky. As the sightseeing boat passed overhead, Ivan forced him into the spinning propeller, finishing him off instantly. Observing the blood in the water and the grinning Ivan, Slava knew that his grandson had finished the mission successfully. On the other side, as Novich and Anna had just snatched the vampire girl back, they were sent flying by Olga and her boyfriend. It turns out Olga, eager to transform her own boyfriend into a creature of the night, contemplated trading the little girl with the vampire hench lady. Before they got out of the car, her boyfriend was still trying to persuade the vampire girl to turn him so she wouldn't have to die at their hands. But the girl, seeing the black mist above her own head, knew better than anyone whether she was destined to die or not. However, after the exchange, the hench lady did not keep her promise and stabbed Olga's boyfriend instead. The hench lady was solely fixated on taking Anna's life. Seeing her henchman colleague also siding with them, the hench lady decided to take care of both of them at once. But suddenly, the vampire girl charged at them, crashing into the electrical box behind them. Due to the electric shock, the girl burst into flames. In the midst of the hench lady's secret relief, Anna grabbed a warning sign and beheaded her. As he watched the little girl's stuffed toy, Slava couldn't help but sigh, feeling as if it were all a dream. At that moment, Olga stepped through the door. Grandpa Slava resented her selfishness, but she shamelessly took the vial of blood regardless. Slava grasped her neck, demanding she release it, but her boyfriend stepped in from behind and stopped Slava. Looking at the vial, he couldn't help but bare his fangs, revealing that he had been transformed. It turns out Novich was initially comforting the wounded man, but Olga suddenly drew a knife and slashed her arm, forcibly turning her boyfriend. Although some unexpected individuals were created within the vampire family, fortunately, they managed to eliminate the evil vampire boss. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.